and develop meaningful relationships, because that's what community is. And it's not something magic that happens overnight. It takes work, it takes dedication, it takes forgiveness, and it's already there.
Welcome to Thrive in the Future podcast. Positive solutions to help you thrive. Designing your intentional life, homesteading, gardening, and rediscovering culture and tradition. Join our thriving community. It's where a community shares our positive solutions, our wins and our losses. Join at signup.thriveinthefuture.com. Okay, welcome back to Thrive in the Future. This week I have Nicole Sauce from Living Free in Tennessee. Welcome, Nicole.
Nice to be here. How are you doing?
Good. So what's new on the homestead this week?
We are still trying to get my house put back together because I replaced all the joists because they were 2x4s. And I don't know if you know this, but 2x4s are not strong enough to hold floors up with pianos and such on them.
Oh, wow. So was the floor bowing and things?
Yeah, I was wondering why my floor was not level, and so we pulled it open, and then we discovered why it wasn't level.
Because it was 2x4s.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised my fridge didn't like just fall through the floor at some point in the last 17 years, but it didn't. It just got lower and lower.
Yeah. So was the kitchen going downhill
Well, I've had
towards the
the rooms
fridge?
have sort of humps. This
Uh-huh.
is how it was. So, and I thought I wanted to put tile down, and you need it to be level to put tile down. So I thought, okay, we're gonna do this, and then I was like, never mind, I'm gonna replace everything, not just a few joists here and there. We're just gonna put joists in to begin with. So
So when you
that's
went
our
down to the
excitement this
basement,
year. Hmm?
when you went down in the basement, then did you see the joists or were those all in the
There's
ceiling?
no basement. Yeah,
Oh, okay. You got crawl space. Yeah. Okay.
I don't even
Wow.
have a crawl space. I have about an inch between the bottom of the 2x4s and the chert under my house.
Uh-huh.
So what happened is we built up higher inside the house. So I have reduced the distance from the floor to the ceiling by adding actual joists.
Goodness.
Yeah.
So what about the homestead? Do you have everything put away for the wintertime?
Not quite. I need to put more leaves on my banana trees or banana bush or whatever. It's a grass, I guess, technically.
Mhm.
And I need to plant my garlic. And that's happening this week. Thanksgiving week is when I usually plant my garlic. So that'll happen at some point in between. I'm rebuilding a hearth for my wood stove, which is also super important to me right now.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I pretty much have everything harvested and we're putting more wood chips and things and mulch and augmenting the soil and things for next year.
I also have a cow coming in 2 weeks, I think. So I need to think about my freezers very carefully. Like anything I shoved in the freezer with the idea that I was going to can it later needs to can it later. It needs to be canned. So that's coming up. I always like to do like the tomatoes in the winter because the heat from the canner comes into the house instead of the heat from the canner coming into your house in August. So I do
Right.
some salsas and tomatoes in the summer, but I also always go into this time of year and I have this whole section of tomatoes that I cored and threw in the freezer.
Yeah, I moved the canner outside onto the porch because it was too hot in the house.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to go is outside canning if you're going to do it in the summer.
Yeah. I need to get it and build an outside kitchen. That would be cool.
Yeah. It is nice.
Very good. So I wanted to bring you on, talk a little bit about community and some of I mean, there's different levels of community. You have the I've got the thriving community group, and then you have
The
the
LFTN one.
yeah, exactly. And so it's funny talking to people because people can't agree on what community is. Some people say, "Oh yeah, I'm in that Facebook group," and "Oh yeah, I'm in that Telegram group," or we get together for workshops or whatever else. And then but you have in the holler there, like you had on episode 42, it takes a holler. You've got a whole bunch of people that actually like move there, right?
Yeah, we have what we call the Holler Neighbors, and these are people who live in essence next door to me or around me.
Mm-hmm.
And we have been moving towards buying more land here to bring more people in.
Really?
But it happened organically, and we're based on ownership. So even the ones who rent from me they have dominion over their homes, right? Like they can't just light it on fire, but
Right.
they, if they want to be vegan in their own house, they can be vegan in their own house. If I want to eat cows in my own house, I can eat cows in my own house. So that has turned out to be a great way to work together, but we have shared goals. And when I realized we were becoming what I call an unintentional intentional community, because it is kind of turning into an intentional community, we sat down and had visioning talks and just talked about, like, what do we want to work on together? Where are the lines? How do we deal with conflict? How do we maintain our relationships? Those sorts of things.
Oh, so you had the Paul Wheaton permaculture thorns type conversation then, huh?
I guess, I don't know. It's so I am a coach who helps people develop their long-term life strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm done with my book, My Three Things, which is all about the method I use. I just used that method on the Holler Neighbors. And, we did it over 3 or 4 weeks, so we had time to think in between, and it turned out pretty good. Nothing's perfect.
So do you own most of the land and then you rent it out to them, sort of like John Bush and the, exit and build strategy, or they just moved there and bought the stuff next to you, or both?
I own most of the land, or Tactical and I own it. And
Mm-hmm.
then I have really good relationships with the people who own properties near me that are for rent.
Okay,
So, like Nighthawk rents from somebody else, but
I
it's right
see.
next door to me. And I'm first in line to buy that. Of course, if it went up for sale, I would buy it, but it would transfer probably into Nighthawk's name because, all I'm interested in is if a property sells, if he decides to leave, I want to be able to, as our community, we can buy it first at a fair market price
Mm-hmm.
so that we have a whack at it before somebody comes in who's just not a very good fit for our culture, because we've established a neighborhood culture that's comfortable. Like I can call on them to help me anytime. They can call on me to help them. You know, we don't have a lot of crime here because we all know each other and we're not sneaking into each other's houses and stealing stuff. And it's a comfortable arrangement, and that can change in a heartbeat with property ownership changing near you. And that's, I mean,
Wow.
that's actually cautionary in rural settings. Like you never know if a place goes for sale on your property. You want to recruit people who you think you can have as good neighbors, I think. Otherwise, you can end up with, or you could end up with somebody who's like, I'm going to complain about your rooster crowing every day until you get rid of your rooster. And I'm going to try to get codes and, passed and enforced. We've had that happen in another county in Tennessee where they're trying to make people register their chickens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I live on 5 acres. Why do I need to register my chickens? I don't need to register my chickens. They're chickens.
Yeah. The state of Kansas tried to make it so if you bought any chicks, then they have to take your name. But it's like, are you asking me for my ID? Okay. My
My
name's
name is
John Doe,
Wilma.
right? Wilma. That's
John
funny.
Doe.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, okay, so how long until the state comes around and says we've got bird flu and now I got to do something about it, right? And yeah, it's just silly. But so when you had these conversations, how deep do you go in the conflict resolution planning type stuff?
Probably not deeply enough. We have not had conflicts that we could not overcome. Most of the conflicts we have been related to um perceived slights. And what we had decided or talked about is, we need to, when we're coming towards a discussion about a conflict, we assume that everybody has a positive outcome
Hmm,
in mind
right.
and try to put aside perceived slights. But it always happens in any relationship that somebody says something, it gets said wrong. Or what will happen in relationships with me, and I do this to people, is I I hyper focus sometimes, and when I hyper focus, I forget to do the things that you should do to maintain your relationships, or I may not even notice that something's going on that should be really obvious because I'm so into whatever the thing is that got my attention. And so then it hurts feelings. And then I've been lucky with the Holler Neighbors. We've kind of decided we're just going to say when our feelings are hurt if we want resolution and talk about it. And then in order to make space for that, we started having meals together. And that would be a time when it's like I'm not hyper focused on, you know, I had to fix my roaster this week. By I mean tactical, but it involved me too.
Yeah,
And,
your
you know,
coffee
that's all
roaster,
I
right?
could think about in the background was the coffee roaster because it's Christmas roasting season. And now I'm
Oh
going to be
wow.
roasting like every day for the rest of this week. But I was roasting. That's right. My hair's all messed up. Like I was roasting right up until we got in here and I took the bun out and like jumped on this podcast because there's like coffee chaff in there, you know,
Yeah,
still coming out from
that's why I put a hat on.
That's why I used to wear my cowboy hat, but I need a new one. So,
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, we had some discussions we wanted to do. Some of the groups around Kansas City wanted to do like a exit and build type thing like John Bush is doing.
mhm.
And it was so we started having these conversations over Telegram about so what do you think about community? And it all came down to this hyper um libertarian thing where you're gonna not gonna tell me what to do. And I was like, okay, so really what you're really looking for is investors or what are you
Yeah,
looking for, right?
yeah.
You know? And it was you're not going to tell me what to do to the point where it was, you know, just not neighborly. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's a problem. You can be freedom oriented and you can empower people's individuality, but if their individuality involves throwing poop at my house, then I'm going to draw a line there. And I it's not me infringing on your freedom to draw that line.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
I think
we were joking because we were like, wow, well, you guys really went from libertarian to there ought to be a law really quickly.
yeah. I think
So,
in communities it's nice to say sort of like these are the standards of good behavior. I
mm,
think that is a discussion that you can have because you're not being a good friend or a good neighbor if what you're doing is causing other people pain. And, you know, if you're drinking yourself to death in your own house, that will cause me pain, but that's your choice.
mm,
But if you're drinking yourself to death in my house,
mm.
then I have every right to say I don't prefer to watch this today. So please go drink yourself to death in your house.
Wow. So you're still having communal meals? How often do you do that?
I would say we manage them about every 2 weeks.
Mm,
With my schedule, we were doing them weekly. Well, there was a point where we were doing them 3 times a week and it was too much. Um, I think weekly is great, except for somebody or other is out of town. With my house currently all ripped up, the only other really big gathering place for a meal that works well is at the Eversoul's house, which is where Jenny used to live. And so like this weekend they're, you know, doing some stuff and, you know, related to Thanksgiving.
sure.
and and so there won't be a meal there and I'm not going to invite people like I have subfloor in like we could meet at my house and have a meal, but I'm coming to you from the camper studio and I'm living in a camper and it's got a pretty small little table here. So
Oh, you're in the camper?
yeah, this is the camp. That's my bed's behind me, which is probably not professional, but whatever. Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome.
my glamper. I got my espresso maker within arm's reach right here, so I have my
Uh-huh.
priorities right.
So did you turn that into a permanent studio then?
No, I my permanent studio will be in the house when it's done in my guest room, and I'm taking behind me where the bed was a bunk, and we took the bunk out. It can be put back in. I'm gonna have that made into a Murphy bed for my guest room so that it has more space to be a studio
Hmm.
because Mama Sauce is not here as much right now. So I can just fold that bed up, use it as my studio, and it's got good power. In the camper you can hear all the outside noises inside. So
Hmm.
in the house it's a little bit better for, you know, you hear fewer rooster crows. You'll probably still hear a rooster crow or a dog bark, but Here, if it rains, you would know it was raining because it will get very loud.
Yeah. So the bed folds up against the wall then?
Yeah,
The
the one
Murphy
I'm
bed?
having in the studio, this bed makes into a couch if I want it to, but I'm just gonna leave it as a bed because,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I work from home, and sometimes if I have the windows open, the rooster will run by and you can hear it. And they'll go,
Yeah.
what's that?
You're like,
Oh
hey, I
yeah.
live on a homestead. I didn't lie about it.
Yeah. And then the chickens are running around and everything. So yeah, it's kind of funny. So you're still having GSD workshops over at your place, right? When's the next one?
So the GSD happens all over the state, and that's where Holler Neighbors is a smaller group, but most of the Holler Neighbors have come from what we call the GSD crew from Tennessee, and that's a group of friends all over the state. The
Hmm.
last GSD was last weekend. So I don't know when the next one is. I know the last one was last weekend. They got together at Brian's house and put in an HVAC system. So
Wow.
his had broken. Nighthawk works in HVAC, so he has like all of the certifications needed to do the things that need to be done. He knows how to do it. And so I think he probably saved Brian thousands of dollars by being able to like run a crew, and then they hung out and had fun. So those are still happening. We haven't had as many large scale ones. We also had a community member break his leg, and he had not finished his turkey coop yet, and winter is coming. And so the
Hmm.
weekend before that, everybody went over and built they dried in his turkey coop. So I suspect the next get together won't be till next year. There may be like a Christmas gathering that's not a GSD project. It's going to be more of a hang out and have fun and eat good food project.
Yeah, we have the no one's an expert, but we're still going to get stuff done workshops because too many people got worked up and wound around the axle because they're not an expert. We're like, yeah, we're going to get together and process chickens. Well, I'm not so sure about that. And then it's like, well, let's get together and it's a
Yeah.
fungible skill and we'll relearn it and show the other people who don't know how to do it, right?
Yeah, there's
And
this real thing about people just overly obsessed with being an expert before you do something.
yeah, or you got to wait to have a workshop when we can have some expert come out. And we were just like, no, we're going to get together and make some vinegar and just, have a barter blanket and just have some fun and learn some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, does
So,
it work or does it like the worst thing that happens is you make vinegar that doesn't turn into vinegar.
yeah.
And then you figure out why and then you try it again. Yeah, that's something I was thinking about because I had an interaction with somebody. I also run some rental units, not here, and they had a situation that required an exterminator, but I couldn't get an exterminator on Friday the 13th in October. But Ryan Steva, who's a home inspector and no slouch on knowing how to do some repair work, came out, figured out that squirrels had gotten into the walls, excluded them, put bait out, closed everything up, and the next thing I get is, you know, what does the professional say? And luckily, accidentally, an exterminator did show up Monday, didn't charge me anything, and said what he did was what I would have done. It's fine.
Hmm.
But it was like this perception that you have to have a professional look at squirrels getting into your house. And the same person will be like, I need a professional, you know, painter to paint. I'm like, you don't actually.
Right.
You like Ryan is a professional. He's just not a specialist. And there's this over obsession with you have to be a specialist to do it right. Like you can paint a wall. I can paint a wall. We can all paint walls. And yeah, sometimes problems get to the point where you need a specialist. But I
Hmm.
think maybe that perspective for me working at the homestead or living on this homestead for about 17 years is that like we've had to learn how to do a whole bunch of stuff ourselves so we can. And the way we learned it was, oh, the water doesn't work because the pump house is broken and a plumber can't come out for 2 weeks. So by gum, I'm going to get on the internet and figure this out because I want water sooner than 2 weeks. And and then you figure it out and you do it. And yeah, specializations are great, but uh, Overrated. End rant.
And rant. Yeah,
End rant.
exactly. That's funny. Yeah, so that's we just started having the not an expert, but we're still going to get stuff done things. And then the more that the people in town end up getting chickens, and then we're starting all over again with them.
Yeah,
So it's good.
that's great. I mean, not an expert, but I'll get it done. Works for me.
Hmm.
I enjoyed having an expert, Joel Salatin, do the chicken processing class in October for Self Reliance Festival. I learned a lot from that guy, and I'm like, I teach chicken classes, but man, I'm going to change a couple of things because that's brilliant what you're doing there. So that's the other side of the coin is definitely go take classes that you think you're good at the thing because you'll find something new.
Sure. Yeah, the last time we did chickens, they apparently had overfed the chicken.
Oh
And
no.
so the liver looked kind of goofy. It had like fatty liver and stuff. So we're like, yeah, we're not going to take a chance on this one. But it was interesting to see that variation.
Yeah, we did a set here that somebody had overfed and you couldn't fit your hand inside to get the evisceration done. It was really
Mhm.
hard. All the
Yeah.
small-handed people had to help.
Small-handed people.
When I'm usually the small-handed person, but I needed smaller hands than mine. It was just like, okay, that's not happening.
Yeah, that's funny. So are you having you getting together with Holler Neighbors for Thanksgiving then?
We have the Holler neighbors who are here are doing Thanksgiving, but we're going to sort of more of a regional thing from just the the area people who are like-minded. So I'd say I'm going to call it inner circle. And we are going not to my house because of the obvious reason. So I'm actually right after this, I have one more live stream and then I start cooking the things I'm bringing tomorrow to somebody else's house and my turkey is already being cooked over there.
Hmm.
So so it'll be fun. It's just everybody who's in town who doesn't necessarily have a bigger family event to go to. We said let's do it together and that's kind of it's sort of like the family away from family approach. I love it.
Great. So bonus question, the uh I ask all my guests in November and December on what's your favorite Christmas holiday memory. And then I take those and excerpt them out and put them into one holiday episode. So what's your favorite Christmas tradition or holiday memory?
It's a holiday memory and it's from I think it was about 2016. It was a Thanksgiving, but it's Christmas related. I was at my dad's place in Oregon for Thanksgiving and my grandma was still alive. So she was in her 90s by this time and we had taken her from where, she was in assisted living to his house and she was sitting in a recliner and she was talking about what it was like to grow up in the depression as
Wow.
a poor person. And she said, I remember this one Christmas where we hadn't had meat for a really long time because we just didn't have anything.
Hmm.
And the neighbors slaughtered a pig. And they knew we hadn't had meat for a long time. And they gave us the pig's heart. And she said, of course, my mom came from Mennonites. So she knew what to do with a pig's heart. And she cooked that up for Christmas dinner. And it was the best Christmas dinner I've ever had. And that memory always sticks with me when I'm going into the holidays because what I took from that was gratitude for what you have. And, we can get all caught up in getting the right gift for somebody or having to have this or that specific food item or do this specific thing. But what was important to my grandma in the Depression was that she could be with her family and that they all got to have part of this pig's heart. And that was enough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Can't beat that. So, Nicole, what's the best way for folks to connect with you on your podcast and in your community, online community?
Boy, well, if people want to get together with me, the best way to do that, if you want to find out everything I'm doing, go to NicoleSauce.com and that will connect you with my podcast, which is Living Free in Tennessee. Holler Roast Coffee, which is the craft roasted coffee that we make here. And then, of course, if you're interested in events, we do the Self-Reliance Festival and a spring workshop here at the homestead. So all of that is over at NicoleSauce.com, and it's like the portal to all things here.
Yeah, I like how you made that so it rolls up to that central NicoleSauce.com location.
It only took me 8 years to figure that one out. And I owned the domain the whole time, and it was just sitting there. I was like, oh, I could do that.
Yeah, that makes a good, because like I have thriveinthefuture.com, but folks don't go there very much. So, because they mostly consume the podcast on the podcast app or whatever, or on YouTube. So yeah, that's a good tip. Okay, final thoughts.
Well, a lot of people do worry about community, and you probably get as many questions about community as I do. It's like, how do I start a community? How do I join a community? And the thing I like to say is that you're already in a community. Whether it's the one you should be in or not is a bigger question. And the best way to attack that is start looking around you at the people that you interact with all the time and ask yourself, how can we be stronger? How can we do something positive? If it's a negative community that you need to leave, leave. But if you're feeling alone right now, start looking around at who you can interact with. Start interacting with them digitally, start interacting with them in person, and develop meaningful relationships, because that's what community is. And it's not something magic that happens overnight. It takes work, it takes dedication, it takes forgiveness, and it's already there. And once you start investing in your community, you will find out there's more there than you ever thought possible.
That's excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Hey, if you like this episode, leave us a tip on Venmo or Cash App at Thriving the Future, or join the Patreon, patreon.com/Thriving the Future. You get early episodes and you get extras. Thank you. Check out Thriver News. It's thriving community news without the noise. It's longer form articles where Perpin and I share how to thrive and how to live that abundant life. That's at Thriver News, thriver.news. Check it out. Thank you for listening to Thrive in the Future podcast. If you like what you hear, please click that like or subscribe button in your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter at Thrive in the Fute, and also go to thriveinthefuture.com